Hey, welcome back to the After Hours ERP podcast. I'm Rob, and yes, I do this after my actual ERP work. And in this podcast, I'm able to speak to people I normally wouldn't be able to. And this is one of those times. So thankfully, I've had Sara Duff from a director at Smart Manufacturer join me. Welcome, Sarah.
Thank you, Rob, for inviting me to onto your podcast.
No, no worries. Please, could you tell us a bit about yourself and how do you play in the ERP space?
Yes, so I'm Sara Duff, Director of Smart Manufacture. So we are an independent manufacturing consultancy that focuses on working with small manufacturing companies, small distribution companies up and down the UK, principally to help them streamline and automate their end-to-end processes. It's all about driving improved efficiency.
I want you to take me back to school here and back to the very basics. ERP is such a big undertaking, and I could actually, like I said, I wouldn't normally have been able to speak to you if I didn't have a podcast. I wouldn't, it's been a while since I've been in the like spoken to someone like you, like that works in the SME space. In fact, I've worked for small businesses as well in the past, and I know how family run businesses work, but what are SMEs? Let's take it like to the very basics.
Okay, well, I think the government definition of an SME is under 250 employees. And I have to say, with the work that we do, we probably spend most of our time working with companies that are under 50 employees, sometimes under 20 employees.
Wow. Wow.
Um, a lot of them are family run businesses. So maybe it's a father and son business, two brothers, a father and daughter business. So I think working in a family business brings different challenges.
This is interesting. Okay. So how do you think why are manufacturing SMEs important to the UK, do you think?
If you think of manufacturing as a sector as a whole, there are 200, over 250,000 active manufacturing companies in the UK, and they make a significant contribution to the UK economy, over 200 billion in value, employ over 2.7 million people with across the sector, and over 99% of those manufacturing companies are actually SMEs. So they're making a huge sort of contribution to effectively the lifeblood of the UK.
It's funny you mentioned this because like when we looked at when I guess when I was a graduate like 13 years ago, the primal desire for myself is to work for a big company, make my name in the world. I'm ready. I've come out of uni. I'm ready to take on the world. Um, but actually, in all fairness, you might just be a small fish in a big pond then, and you'll take an entry level role. Um, and I know we've kind of spoken a little bit previously, just before, and I wanted to ask you, like, for example, like a brother of mine, he's looking for apprenticeships in the small town that we're in, and couldn't find anything. I think the economy is a bit tougher right now, and I can certainly tell you that if you work if you work for a smaller business, you're gonna take on more work. How do you think apprenticeships play in that, and do you think it's important?
I do, and I think unfortunately, perhaps in the past years, people and perhaps parents and schools haven't given sufficient attention to the manufacturing sector. There's a lot of people that their first course of action at school is, I want to go to university, and perhaps university is the right place for a lot of young generation. But equally, there are those that perhaps university isn't best suited to, but perhaps they just weren't aware of the opportunities available to them, and particularly in small manufacturing companies. And it's not all about jobs on the shop floor. There's functions in procurement, in sales,
Yeah, in tech,
in marketing,
right? If you
in absolutely in tech.
if they work with you, you would be giving a role which is like a hands-on role for the whole business to run the tech there. Not just talking IT, but the actual ERP. So it is interesting. Yeah, yeah, because most people would just gear up for like what's the biggest and baddest firm I can work for. for my CV, but actually when you get there, you're boxed in. And if you're an apprentice, you also save like the tuition fees, right? We talk about the tuition fees for uni as well. I mean, for me, I want to see more apprenticeships from the SMEs. Imagine if each family-run manufacturing firm had an apprenticeship. That would contribute massively to the UK economy, right? Like, in the shortage of jobs out there, again, I'm speaking personally. My brother couldn't find anything for, um, you know, where we are. Like, I live in London now, but in our small town where I come from. So, don't want to name anything, but it is tough out there, and I think there is some good experience you can get out of it. Just something I wanted to throw in there,
No,
definitely.
it is tough. And I think sometimes also, dare I say it, that small manufacturers aren't good at necessarily the best place to actually position themselves in the right way to the younger generation as well. I mean, some of them, dare I say, not all of them even have a website. And those that do, when you meet the MDs, they're so passionate about their businesses, but actually don't always get that impression when you look at their website. So I think sometimes how they appeal to the younger generation could be improved.
That is interesting because yeah, the owners right now might not be the most tech savvy, but they actually have a good business, a fun business, and they potentially might have a good role and a low cost role for somebody to get their foot in the door that can make so much impact. It's different. It's different now. I mean, I guess I've been working in the ERP space for the IFS space for like 13 years, and I'm like, I'd like to impart some of my knowledge to these young people. I'm in that kind of stage now. Funny you said that. But yeah, yeah, like I said, this is an undercooked part of SMEs, and I do hope there is some someone that will listen out there and start thinking about this. Even if I create one job out of this conversation, that is a win. And tell me if it did, guys. That'll be amazing. That'll be amazing to hear. We make the podcast so much more worth it. All right, let's move on. Can you give me like five examples of like interesting SME manufacturing businesses you've worked with?
Yeah, we worked during COVID. I'm thinking of two examples. One was a timber manufacturing company, and during COVID, their business was going up like that.
Mm,
But they had all this information scattered and dispersed. They had an old website, so they were updating that. They had a legacy accounting system. So they wanted to bring all of that information into a single place and integrate it with the other systems. And as you all know, Rob, an ERP system in non-technical language is often the glue in the middle that every other system feeds from. And so we work with them to, in their terminology, put the glue in the middle and put in an ERP system that then would integrate with their accounting system and with their new e-commerce platform. And we did all of that in a month. We told them it would take them 3 months. They said, we don't have 3 months, we have a month. And we helped them implement that system in a month.
okay, I'm gonna dig into this and probably jump a little bit for the conversation because obviously this is well positioned to clip this obviously, and you could share it with potential clients that you might end up with. But let's say what is your go-to solution for ERP in this small manufacturing, yeah, enterprises?
Yeah, I mean, we've worked in the past with a number of ERP platforms that have been specifically designed for the small to manufacturing sector. But I guess our current go-to platform is a platform called MRPEasy, or so a lot of our customers call it Mr. Peasy. But one of its attributes is it's easy to use, and hence its name MRPEasy. We have over 900 companies now globally using the platform, and just shy on 460. So it's very much designed for companies who've perhaps managing most of their operations on disparate Excel spreadsheets. Maybe they've got their bills of material in a SolidWorks or an Inventor or a Fusion. And really, it's that first stepping stone on, as you and I would describe it, as the Industry 4.0 ladder. But effectively, it helps really join an organization up, because I think that's the problem that we see with a lot of small manufacturing companies. They've got their silos of information, their different departments, and MRPeasy really is that, can act as that first step to get the organization joined up and all working from as we would call it in ERP language, the single version of the truth. So a
So
consistent system.
yeah, it's funny. I was telling my manager about this potential interview, and I said like, yeah, we kind of did our pre-talk, and I'd mentioned MRPs, and he did a quick Google, and he said like, oh, actually, it only costs £120 per user per month or something like cheap, something along those lines. I know that's like a kind of negotiable part, but I'm thinking for these kind of things is you're there for a month, you implement software, low cost, high impact, and you really see the change for the company that you're in. So that is an interesting method, I guess, because usually these ERP implementations are drawn out. They're very expensive, right?
Yeah, no, they are. I mean, Peasy, on average, that 1 month was particularly quick. But we normally say average is 3 months. You can do it in shorter time frame, but it's all about putting the data in the right way, having the right quality data. But yes, we can make an impact in a very short amount of time, provided that, of course, we bring the people on with us and everyone ends with our implementation using the system.
So I'm not going to let you off that much. I know that you probably owe me a few more examples. I'm not going to say hold you to five. So you mentioned a timber manufacturing company. Um, you mentioned a golf one from our previous
Yeah,
chat.
so we're just engaging with a golf accessories company. So I don't think, and I'm not a golfer, but anybody who plays golf will probably have seen this company's products across the golf pitch. They're very much still operating as if the business had just started up. They're already a successful business, but it's very hands-on, everybody's diving in, overlapping with one another's roles, and actually they've got a huge potential for growth, not only here in the UK but internationally, if they had the right streamlined processes and the right systems in place. So yes, we're just starting engaging with them. But another example was a sauna manufacturing company.
Okay.
And
I love how
that
varied these are. These are so fun. Like
That's why I'm
honestly.
picking these examples. Yeah,
Okay.
so that was a second generation business where the lady MD, and it's always a pleasure seeing a few more women in the sector. I think women
Yes.
represent about 26% of the manufacturing sector, but she was doing a lot of work to actually look at the business that her father had built, but how she could sort of streamline and improve efficiency. So that's another example. Another one
Well, I
was
was gonna
a
say before you move on, if you guys need any testers for the sauna, like I'll be more than willing to be a tester.
yeah, I offer my services as well on that one. Another company is a white label cosmetics manufacturing company. And interestingly, I think the first the first conversation I had with the MD was my biggest challenge, Sarah, is I have no visibility of raw materials coming into the factory. So much so that my production director had to put, everything on hold in terms of new orders coming in during the last month. And I thought that was awfully strange. But when we got to looking at the process mapping exercise with them, it became very clear when I asked about raising of purchase orders and how they manage their suppliers. There was a bit of a deathly silence. And then one of them put their hand up virtually, because this was during COVID when we were doing it virtually, and said, I think I need to explain, we don't actually raise purchase orders. And there was the lack of visibility. So as soon as we said, that's easy peasy to solve with MRPEasy,
Mhm.
yeah, that was a big relief. So some of these things probably to you and I seem fairly basic, but to companies who, yeah, haven't implemented these systems, yeah, some of these things can be quite basic.
It's funny because if it's like under 50, they probably have a Microsoft software office and they probably need the MRPZ or something. Something startup, something low cost. And of course, like if you think about obviously the consulting bills as well. But if it's like like you know what I mean, like if you gear it with like this is what we're gonna solve for you, this is an interesting one for me because it's done in such a agile scale. Um, yeah, love to be a fly on that wall. How does that look for you then for something like that? Would that be like? you'll identify quick wins and there'll be a set term of contract? Like, how would that work?
Yeah, so how we do it is we look at and we always talk to a company first in terms of when we're doing the process mapping to understand what the challenges are the business is facing, what's prompting them to look for an ERP system, what are those short-term goals that they need to achieve. And we make sure that the way that we implement MRPEasy absolutely initially addresses those short-term goals. But it's also important, like you'll know, an ERP system should have a shelf life of at least 10 to 15 years. So it's important that the system is able to grow with them and scale as they develop the business. In terms of you talk about consultants and being expensive, I've had that comment from quite a few MDs of small manufacturing companies, and that's what sort of put them off lengthy contracts and quite high day rates. We have what we consider to be quite a relatively cost-effective day rate, and normally, if we're looking at an average 3-month implementation, we say that should be anywhere between about 8 and 12 man days of our time supporting that manufacturing company with the implementation of MRPEasy. So yeah, it's very low cost software and very small, relatively small amount of our consultancy at a modest day rate to get them up and running so they can see that return on investment in a short period.
I suppose, like, again, obviously this isn't part of the question that's been up on top here, but you can definitely get close with the, the family that you're implementing this with, and you can definitely see the impact that you're making, especially if they don't have something like a purchase order. Like, goodness, like, you probably see immediate impact, and probably watching like a baby grow. Maybe it's the same thing. Maybe when you've helped them out and they've suddenly start to flourish. I could imagine that that could be quite a satisfying driver for you.
It is really rewarding. I think what gets us out of bed, my fellow director and myself, is making a difference to a small business. It's sort of imparting our knowledge and our experience, and also giving them the benefit of someone outside looking into the business. I think what a lot of small businesses, they are running on their treadmill. They've got so many different challenges hitting them, and therefore sometimes they spend, in my view, too much time in the business rather than working on the business. And sometimes it just takes somebody from the outside to say, why are you doing it this way? And then it's, well, we've always done it this way. Oh, is there a different, better way of doing things? Because you become quite insular in terms of your own business, or you can do.
Okay, I won't, like, again. I know you were starting to head off to the next example, so please, it's my fault. But I just, it just comes out of me. I think it's a nice leading on to topics. But yeah, any more fun examples?
Any more other examples? I think we've got another example of perhaps what could see on the surface more of a traditional subcontract manufacturing company, but we've just started working with them. And what I love about this company is the two directors are in their early 30s. So very young, want to really take this business forward. They're drowning, and this is their term, they're drowning in spreadsheets. They're doing lots of copying and pasting. They're having to keep manually checking in the workshop, to make sure all of the machines are running, that people have finished a job, starting another job. And there's so much, different way of doing things. So we've looked at their workflows, we looked at their end-to-end processes. And I think the final comment from one of their directors when we'd spent the half day with them was, gosh, it's been so great to just download all of this sort of stress and pressure of the way that we're working with somebody who can see how we can do it differently. It's been like a therapy session for us. So thank you for your time so far. And that, yeah, was really, really rewarding.
When you say more typical subcontract manufacturing firm, what would that typically be? Sorry, I'm just not that
I
familiar.
think that's more traditional. You'll get your drawings from your customer. You need to manufacture this widget to this drawing. And more of a traditional manufacturing than perhaps not so exciting as your sauna manufacturing comes, your cosmetics, more of a traditional engineering business.
Okay, fair enough. But of course, with an engineering business like that, it has to respect the complexity that it might entail, right? Pretty much. So
Absolutely. Yeah.
okay, okay, that's a great recap. As you probably listed four there, so it's great, honestly. So what are these? the things that these manufacturing SMEs need to do to survive. You've kind of mentioned it, like, coming off of a spreadsheet,
Yeah,
having a PO, like a purchase order to start, like, yeah.
I think obviously,
I think
digital.
your light went off as well. I didn't want to. Oh, yes.
There we
Right.
are.
Right. Yeah, that's it. I want you perfect all the way through.
Thank
No,
you.
no edits on this, by the way. So yeah, you'll see it as it goes. Please, but please, please.
Yeah, so obviously adoption of technology. Once upon a time, it used to be an asset and an adage that if you adopt digital technology, you can thrive. I would see it more if you don't adopt digital technology, you're going to fade by the wayside. So it's absolutely crucial in terms of
But
surviving.
are there still people that live off of, when you say that, you say come off of spreadsheets? Because I'm pretty sure nobody's doing pen and paper now, right? Surely. Like, what are the
We
levels
do
that we
see
think?
paper. No, we see lots of manual whiteboards. We still see a lot of companies that rely on information in people's heads. They
But
think
that's
that's a
that's isn't that true for big, like big firms that use ERP as well? There's a lot of people that want to get dependent on one person, which is, to me, obviously it's not a good deal because your
no.
business is exposed when that person leaves. So, but yeah.
It's always a worry. But I think the spreadsheets. I mean, we're working at the moment with a food manufacturing company, and when I tell you that they are operating their business off 31, yeah, I did say 31 separate spreadsheets. That really is an extreme example, but certainly there's still lots of companies out there. There's companies on the shop floor that are getting their guys and girls to literally manually write in how many hours they've actually spent on doing jobs. So there's lots of very traditional ways of working, which may have sufficed in the past. But all these companies now, I think there's still a lot of hype about digital technology, and with amongst the sort of small manufacturing companies, and a lot of I mentioned that previous example where the two directors are in their early 30s. That's quite an exception to the rule in terms of the companies that we deal with. So I think the challenges with a lot of leaders of small businesses, they haven't grown up with technology. They didn't, play with technology at school. So it still can be quite intimidating. And, it still can be a bit of a black art. There's just so much technology out there. There's so many people who profess to be experts. Where do they start? And sometimes it's just too difficult, too confusing. And they've said to me, do you know what? It's made us just think we'll just continue doing things how we always are doing. But certainly in terms of being able to survive adoption of digital technology, I think in terms of the leadership of some of these organizations, that's absolutely key to have a strong vision for where you're taking the company, to build that, strong team that's all going in the same direction, that's collaborating across teams. And having the very much also having a customer centric approach. I think more and more now customers are becoming ever more demanding. And if you're going to have sustainable growth, you better make sure that you've got multiple touch points with your customers, that you can exploit, any opportunities out there, perhaps of developing new products to meet these or new services. So we're seeing a lot of manufacturing companies now um, adopting a direct to consumer approach, in whether it's sort of customer portals, it's e-commerce websites, how they can get that stage closer.
Very interesting. I mean, let's talk about the family dynamics that you encounter. You've kind of mentioned this before, which is like the 30-year-old generation for, like, that's taken over. But do you see any, like, between that generation and, let's say, the people in their 50s or 60s, which are very much still old school versus the new school? Do you have any kind of examples where you guys have come in, been able to, I guess, would you say harmonize them, or a therapy session, as you put it?
Yeah, we've got one company. We haven't yet officially started working with them, but I hope it's not too long in the distant. So we got it's two nephews and their aunt and uncle. And so we got called in, or I got called in by one of the nephews. They're relatively local to where we're based on the south coast for once, because we travel across the UK. And they asked me to come in. I went in, met the family, the two nephews and the aunt and uncle. I was greeted by a massive whiteboard. I've never ever seen such a big whiteboard in my life. I mean, I could hardly read what was on there. So how on earth they use that to schedule and reschedule jobs, I don't know. But it was quite interesting. We got talking about the need to make sure that you accurately know your costs, and particularly for those manufacturers that are make to order, make to bespoke. A lot of them are developing their quotes. Sometimes they have quite sophisticated ways of doing those quotes, but they don't know always whether those quotes are accurately reflecting the cost. So we had this conversation, and the aunt, who's a certain age, although interestingly she was still younger than me, but said her age difference, was talking about the fact that she's got a very strong team. They've been there for many, many years, and she didn't want to come across as bringing in a big brother approach. And how was she going to avoid this happening? And I think one of the things that we always do with our consultancy, and I said to her, is it's about, as you all know, Rob, it's about how, not just the technology, but how you implement the technology, how you bring the team with you. I still wasn't really getting any traction, and she was saying she was fearing this big brother approach. So I had to sort of utilize my quite blunt approach sometimes, which does work quite well with manufacturing companies, to ask her the direct question of, how confident was she that the quotes that she was, or her team was issuing, how confident was she that they truly reflected the actual costs, both in terms of the actual inventory costs and the labor? At which point there was a sort of little smile came on the face, and I think I'd hit the pain point exactly. So yeah, it's sometimes you do have to be quite direct at times, but there's generally a fear of technology and how it can, how it needs to be implemented.
Just to dive in a bit deeper on this, because what do you think? Let's say the old school. What are their fears in technology, and then I guess the younger generations would just be like they're born with, like, they're more easy with their phones and social media, better website, and because you'd think at this time that's just the bare minimum for companies now, like a good technology.
You would think that, but in terms of the older generation, I think I've alluded to it. They haven't grown up with technology. They don't understand it. There's a massive different technologies out there with buzzwords like Industry 4.0, smart factory. What does it all mean? Where do I start? Oh, it's all too difficult. I've always done it like this. I've had my spreadsheets. I've got my manual whiteboard. It's not broken. Why do I need to fix it? I've got Angela or Chrissy over there, who's been with the company 20 plus years. She knows everything that needs to know about the company. This is the way I've always done it. I'm going to continue doing it. So that's the sort of and I don't want to come across as I gave that other example as big brother, and wanting, people to force this technology on people.
Mm.
I think the younger generation, as you said, they've grown up with technology. They see it as the norm. And they also want to look at different ways of doing things. How can we work smarter, not harder? We don't want to work 16 hours a day in the factory. We want to find ways that we can streamline and automate processes. We don't want to copy and paste from spreadsheets. We want to spend that time, analyzing it, getting the right information from what's going on in the business, doing things differently, improving. And also the younger generation also want to encourage even younger generations to come into the factory. And I think that
Talk about
we've
this,
heard,
yes, apprenticeships, and
we've heard that puts off a lot of younger people who will go into a small manufacturing company and then suddenly look at, oh, where's the technology?
but
What technology?
where is the buy-in? And I think if you could just up the lighting as well, just a reminder of your lighting setup. Is it just you need to move the mouse?
I don't know. It's fading a bit. It's coming back now.
It's back. You're back. No, it's all right. You might just have to be moving the mouse, like maybe for your monitor.
Yeah.
I think honestly, what is the breakthrough normally for the older generations, do you think, to kind of conform, I guess, and try and, because I guess, like, what are the comforts of the of pen and paper and spreadsheets that you think, is it like speaking to someone face to face that's so important for you know what I mean? Like,
I
this,
think
I
for
think
the
we've
role
got,
models,
yeah,
sorry,
I
Rob,
think,
I would
yeah,
say role models. So
right,
we get asked an awful lot by companies that we engage with. Oh, do you know another company in our sector that has had similar challenges to us that adopted an MRP system like MRPEasy? What was the value? So they like role models.
right,
Sometimes they'll have. So in the case of the golf accessories company that I mentioned earlier, the MD has brought two guys in the last few months that have come from other manufacturing companies where they've used technology, so they've seen the return. So again, that's
so
somebody
nice testimonial.
that's the testimonial,
But
and that can make a difference.
no, no,
Sometimes also their production is ramping up,
mm,
so or they're going into a different area of manufacturing, and that's often the catalyst, if you like, for doing things in a different way.
right, so you're
um,
connecting them to somebody who's done it in a better way.
I think that works with, I mean, it probably is, it's the case. I know even from my corporate background, many moons ago, if we went into even a new corporate client, the first thing they would do is, where's your testimonials, where's your case studies? Because I think the danger is hearing from a consultant or hearing from another vendor will
Right.
always say things are brilliant. We won't necessarily, go through the weaker areas or the development areas. Whereas if you speak directly to someone else who's done it, they will give you, yeah, chapter and verse, the good and the bad.
I think, like, working with the, like, older generation personally, it's if I deliver them results, they'll come back. You know, I don't know if it's something what I'm working on, because, and also like meeting them in person, which a lot of it's remote. Like for me personally, a lot of it's remote these days. It's difficult to build, and it's also a wonderful thing. Like for example, you and me, we've never met in person. Like this is like where we speak. It's quite normal, but I think there's something nice about the old school approach of meeting somebody, looking them in the eye, shaking their hand. Um, I guess trying to like just, I always worked for me kind of approach. Um, I think the younger generations have lost as well. So um, it is an interesting topic.
I think that's why we always make sure when we start any of our consultancy engagements, we do that first date wherever possible on site, because I think you see how the teams, members of the teams interact. You can miss things. I think when you do it virtually, when we do the tour of the shop floor, things start making sense. So yeah, I think we always like that face-to-face contact. Then we can do an awful lot, most of the work going forward virtually, but I think that human interaction, that seeing around the operation, really makes a big difference.
Yeah, I could see, like, especially connecting with others, and you being the conduit for that. Because as you said, to me it baffles me. There's so many companies that are SMEs in the UK, but there isn't much spotlight on them. It's kind of wow. This is kind of, I have to ask these questions to be able to find out from you. It's kind of, yeah,
I
yeah,
think they can get lost, amidst the bigger companies, and they, yeah, as I said, they're so passionate about their own businesses. They're very entrepreneurial what they do, but they're busy in their factories. They sounds awful. They don't come out a lot. That sounds bad, but they're too busy doing what they're doing because
right,
they haven't got the right streamlined process in place, that they could spend some time getting
right.
out, finding out what else is going on, and yeah, often they're quietly just getting on with things, not complaining.
Okay. I'll throw a couple more questions in. I think. Um, so AI obviously is kind of like this buzzword, but also like a little revolution that's happening. It's been around for a while. The what they call, like language models, large language models. Like it's been around for a while, but suddenly it's coming into fashion. It's becoming on people's smartphones for the chat stuff, and IFS is doing some industrial AI, which is integrating in the background for some of the bigger businesses. But let's just say that chatbot type AI. Do you think SMEs could make use of them? How do you think they could prepare themselves for it? How are you thinking about it in your consulting org? Just be interested.
Yeah, so MRPEasy has launched a few months ago the official Mr. Peasy, which is their AI-enabled support tool. And we've had some tremendously positive feedback from that. And in fact, I sampled it in earnest a few months ago when I had quite a significant high impactful RFI that I needed to complete, and I about 80% of the questions that I couldn't naturally answer because it was quite a detailed RFI. I managed to answer through Mr. Peasy. I'm sure there will be more developments from MRPeasy on the AI front. It's interesting that I would say over the last sort of 3 to 6, maybe last 3 months, particularly, I'm hearing more and more I'm having more and more conversations, I should say, with manufacturing companies where AI is creeping into the conversation. I think a few of them obviously are playing around with AI tools in the personal life, or maybe particularly writing LinkedIn posts as an example. Therefore, they're hearing more noise about AI, so they're asking more questions. I think for me, AI is no different from any other technology in terms of how you prepare for it. That there's an awful lot of benefits in terms of helping you with predictive maintenance, helping where you can avoid supply chain disruptions, operational efficiency. There's all of the good benefits in terms of what AI can bring. But I think, like any technology, it's about looking at AI in terms of how it will support your business strategy. What are your key performances for what you want that AI implementation to deliver for you? And then the biggest worry I have, because I've experienced it, is that for you to have the right results from AI, you've got to make sure that you've got the best quality, the best consistent data. And having taken some data from small manufacturing companies and the state of it, yeah, that's one area where I do fear, unless you've got that data cleansing done.
Honestly, that's common in any business. It's like you even in reporting, right? You get what you put in, so don't
Yeah.
expect absolute miracles. But the RFI, is it request for information? Is that like
Yes.
is that a start for like to scope out the product from potential customers? Is that what?
Yeah, so some companies, that was an unusual scenario, I would say. Most small manufacturing companies, they may do a sort of small requirements capture document, but this was sort of led by another manufacturing organization. So they had put together a more formal process. I have to say it's quite unusual in the
Yeah,
small manufacturing sector.
no, and again, like I said, these are just fun topics. There is a lot to do before you can get AI ready. There's more fundamental, it feels like more fundamental benefit to sitting down before you can even think about this. But it's good to keep one eye on it, right? I just thought it'd be a fun one to throw in there.
No, absolutely. And then you've got to work out also, the other point is the resources. Do you have the right skilled
Right.
resources internally? And I would say, from my experience working with small manufacturing companies, the answer is probably no. So therefore, what experts are you going to bring in? My fear a little bit with AI, it's a bit like my experience a few years ago about GDPR,
Oh, you're going
that
dark.
suddenly
Move the
there's
mouse. Move the mouse. Let's go.
yeah,
We're going.
suddenly there's going to be all these so-called experts. Some will be true experts, but I wonder about some claiming to be. So I guess that's my concern. It's a bit of a buzzword, so everyone wants to jump
Mm,
on the bandwagon.
yeah, you're not. Again, like I said, I don't think you're alone. I think a lot of businesses, not just SMEs, are thinking like, because let's face it, some ERPs are latching costs into these, and there needs to be that tight use case. And how do you even prep for it? I think those are the questions where ERPs could really think about. It's I guess it's hard enough to even think about what they are. and how the information is spread, because not everything is for podcast format. I appreciate that. You don't want to give your secrets away to all the competing manufacturers, but at the same time, I think, like I said, how do you break through the businesses, not just SMEs, for them to be able to latch on to going, okay, this is a worthwhile investment for me. I think we're all finding that out. And like I said, it's a rapid pace, right? It's over the last year or two, it's improved massively. And what is the conversation going to be next year or the following? Um, Even more important to get on the tech scale, right? The digital tech scale. I think more of what can it do for you today? Well, what can it do for you in 2 years? I think that's my argument personally.
But get on the ladder now.
Yeah, yeah, just yeah, get off the spreadsheets for now, or at least try to get Sarah on. Okay, final one. I think this has put some sparks in a little bit last time, but we talked about how important SMEs are to the UK and how many there are, like that don't even have a LinkedIn presence or can maybe you know what I mean. It's kind of tough. Most of the chats are about the podcast are about I don't know, some reporting softwares and big I have like ERPs like IFS that I use, but what do you think? Like, how is the government helping, or should they help SMEs in the UK? Where are we?
Yeah, well, one of the things that because it directly relates to what we do, one of the things that was a great starting point was the Made Smarter program that was launched, I want to say about 6, 7 years ago, and piloted in the Northwest, which was a program that came out of a government review looking at SMEs in the UK and comparing them with our pan-European counterparts in terms of the level of, well, one of the aspects was the level of digital adoption. And basically, the conclusion was that our adoption of digital technology in the UK was far lower than our pan-European counterparts. So
Mm.
this Made Smarter program was put in place with one of the main objectives being to help particularly exclusively small manufacturing companies to accelerate their adoption of digital technology.
Wow.
So we've worked extensively with the program in those regions that it's been rolled out in. But
Have
I
you been
was
given a budget or a grant to help them with the stuff
Yeah,
that you
so
need?
there, yes, part of that is a
Okay.
digital maturity roadmap. The other part is grant funding, sort of 20K match funding. So that can make quite a big difference to a small manufacturing company.
Absolutely. An
Where
appreciative amount for trying to
absolutely,
digitize your small business.
yeah, so it's been very well received in those regions it's been rolled out in. And so it was really good for us to hear with the October budget announcement that it was going to be rolled out across the remaining regions of the UK from the 1st of April. So we are now plugged into those new regions and helping to promote and spread the word. Because I think the other thing is, I mean, there's something like over 100 different business support programs out there. There's organizations that can help small manufacturing companies. But I think sometimes it's all lost in the noise, and it's just there's so much out there. It needs to be more streamlined and improved communication so these small manufacturing companies can navigate to the specific programs that can help them. Generally, access to funding for companies that are looking to sort of scale up is still quite challenging for them. We talked about access to sort of skills. Obviously the apprenticeship levy is being reviewed at the moment. But yeah, I think certainly the biggest challenge that manufacturing sector has is the general public's view of manufacturing. I mean, I still meet people in the UK, and particularly some younger generation who actually are quite bewildered that the fact that I spend most of my time with small manufacturing companies, because they actually do say to me, "Gosh, do we still manufacturing anything
Oh
in the
my God,
UK?"
what a backward! Like, yeah, I mean, if you've given the figures that you have, they're quiet backbone to the economy, right? So,
But it's those facts and figures that aren't generally out there with
mm,
with public. So yeah, there
good
needs to
on
be
you
that.
for being an advocate. No, for sure. I'm very grateful. Again, like I said, I'm not. It's been a very informative 45 minutes so far. I've really learned a lot. And I guess this one of these like government initiatives. I guess even SMEs don't know that they have it available for
No,
them.
I mean, the Northwest, I mean, we still talk to companies, bearing in mind what I said, I think it was about 6 years ago, it was launched in the Northwest. We still speak to small manufacturing companies in the Northwest. You'd think that they have done a massive amount of communication, but I still speak to companies as soon as I know they're in the Northwest region and they're very keen to work with us. We talk about the Made Smarter, and there are still people who say, what's the Made Smarter program? So I think there's a need for that constant communication and navigating small businesses to where all this business support, because that's just one program. There's an awful lot of support out there, but it's finding it and basically applying for it. And
Imagine like ending up with a budget that could help digitize your bit, like your small business, right? That didn't even know existed. It's almost like another helping hand for your business, right? So yeah, it's
well, in
great.
fact, the sauna manufacturing company that I referenced earlier, yeah, so they had access to the Made Smarter program, which certainly, enabled them to move forward at a quicker pace.
Sarah, it's been an amazing chat. I've learned a lot, and I would say good luck to you and the small manufacturing businesses out there. You guys keep it going for us in the UK.
We'll keep waving the flag and doing everything we can to support their growth, because
Absolutely,
making a difference is what we love doing.
absolutely. Thank you so much for joining me.
And
Take
Rob,
care.
thank you so much for having me as
Pleasure.
a guest.
Thank you so much.